How do you tell the difference between intuition and the patterns that are keeping you stuck? Could it be that mainstream spirituality has been co-opted and teaches us to stay compliant, stuck in our perpetual loops? I learned a valuable lesson recently, and I wanted to share it with you because I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Because intuition is very real, but without logic, it's easy to misinterpret it. And when that happens, intuition gets confused with avoidance. And avoidance turns into a spiritual loop. Over the past few weeks, I thought I was being guided to listen to my intuition, but it ended up being a repeated pattern of mine disguised as spiritual insight. I came to Hawaii on a one-way ticket, and the last time I did this was back in 2020, where I only listened to intuition. Let me give you some context. Back then, I left my life behind, thinking I had found the new Earth, a place that existed outside of the so-called matrix, away from responsibility, structure, and society. It felt new and exciting. It was calling me to stay and rid myself of my material attachments, my connection to society, and to escape the matrix, which I deemed was the rest of the world. I landed in this hippie community, which at the time was exactly what I was searching for. So I quit my job, dropped out of school, and left everything behind. And honestly, I don't regret that decision. It led me to where I am today, helped me to start my own business. It sent me on a deep healing journey. And eventually it took me backpacking solo through South America for another 3 years after that. But amidst this spontaneous adventure of soul searching and nomadic travel, there was a pattern there that I couldn't quite see yet. Often in life, as soon as I started gaining momentum, I would leave. I kept searching outside of myself for something else, and as soon as things began to stabilize, I'd pack up and move on. For a while, that felt like growth, evolution. I was young and I had exploring to do. But the further I went into the spiritual world, chasing the flow and transcendence, the more I fell into the spiritual trap that nobody really talks about. And I want to talk about it now. If you've ever felt like you're making progress, only to self-sabotage and throw it all away in the name of intuition, if you keep starting over, calling it healing, sticking around just long enough until it gets uncomfortable, and then leaving, this video is for you. Because what I thought was intuition for a long time was actually just avoidance. And eventually that pattern got so loud that I had nothing left to run from. I have a full separate video where I talk more deeply about this spiritual trap and how I escaped the matrix and then consciously chose to come back into it. If you want to watch that after this one, it'll add context. But let's stay focused here. This time, I returned to Hawaii differently. I came back with new eyes, with maturity, with discernment, with the ability to hold logic and intuition at the same time. And then something unexpected happened. When I arrived, I started feeling the same emotions as the first time I landed here years ago. The synchronicities started coming out of nowhere, all these signs appearing as evidence that I should stick around. And for a while, I started fantasizing that that could become real. For my spiritual brain, this felt really good. But my logical brain knew that something wasn't adding up. This was a familiar pattern. And when I chose not to act on it, I felt a sense of relief. That relief taught me everything. Modern spirituality would tell me to simply trust the feeling, to listen to intuition no matter what, to believe the universe will have the details all figured out for you. But that's when I realized something crucial. Not every intuitive pull is meant to be followed. Some are meant to be felt, witnessed, and integrated, not acted on. Because what we often call being in the flow can quietly become a way of avoiding the very life we're meant to build. When I realized that Hawaii wasn't the move for me right now, I didn't feel disappointed. I actually felt relieved. And that relief showed me something I couldn't see before. I wasn't meant to uproot my life in the name of intuition. I was meant to observe the pattern, to feel it fully, and then to bring logic into the picture. Not to blindly trust the universe to handle all the details just because I felt aligned and protected. because doing so would have meant starting over, losing momentum, letting go of the things that I had already built. So I had to ask myself an honest question. Why would I dismantle everything I've worked for just to chase a feeling? What I was searching for wasn't somewhere else. It was actually right in front of me. I just needed to see it differently. And here's the distinction that changed everything for me. Intuition doesn't rush you, but reactivity does. Intuition can coexist with logic, but reactivity just rejects it. When I was younger, I thought that spirituality meant only listening to feeling. If something felt expansive, I followed it. If something felt uncomfortable, I left. But that's not intuition, that's impulse, dressed up as wisdom. This time, I did something different. I let myself feel the pull, completely. I didn't judge it and I didn't suppress it. I didn't act on it immediately. I simply sat with it. I realized this moment wasn't asking me to escape. It was asking me to stay, to rewrite the pattern, to choose continuity instead of a reset. Discernment is being able to feel intuition without losing sight of the mission. Being able to recognize spiritual ideas that are actually patterns in disguise. Because spiritual bypassing doesn't free you. It disconnects you from truth. And one without the other will never work, because we live in duality, and the work is integration. Too much spirituality without reality creates fantasy and disassociation. Too much logic without spirituality creates rigidity and fragmentation. Going too far in either direction breaks wholeness. The real work is bridging the two. Logic and intuition, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, because structure creates direction, while flow creates insight. You need both, and you are the awareness that's integrating them together. Not everything that feels good is meant to be manifested. Some things feel good because they offer escape. Modern spirituality, unfortunately, teaches us that escape is freedom, but it's not. Your job isn't to chase what feels good. Your job is to discern what actually serves your highest good and what's possible within the timeline that you're currently in. You can't bypass path dependence, which is a concept from quantum physics, and I explain it even further in my video about quantum leaping and why it's not what you think it is. But path dependence describes that the sequence of events that led you right here, right now, matter. They play a role in the probability of a new timeline even being possible for you. You can't skip time, but you can leverage it. Growth happens through patience, through intentional action, and through radical acceptance of what's real right now. What's in front of you is often the biggest teacher. And trying to bypass that doesn't liberate you. It fragments you until you're willing to feel what needs to be felt and integrate what's being asked of you. The pattern will just keep getting louder and louder. Here's the truth I've landed on. Sometimes the mind disguises itself as intuition. Discernment is learning the difference, and that comes from awareness of your patterns and the ability to listen and ground what you hear in reality. Because intuition offers information while logic actually helps us to interpret it. When those two work together, alignment stabilizes, and real quantum leaps don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they look, in this instance, like staying with discomfort, staying with repetition, staying with what you've already begun. And integration is where power actually settles. Now, let's be clear here. The core message isn't about copying my choices, not staying where you're at, not making a big move. You need to listen to yourself. It's about learning to be honest with yourself and making decisions that serve your highest good. That path is different for everyone. But once you learn to trust yourself and stay grounded in reality, things start to move and shift in the most magical ways. So if this video resonated, and if you felt the urge to uproot your life when things start working, you're not broken. You're standing at the edge of maturity. Hey, I'm Nate. If this landed, consider subscribing and checking out the other videos on my channel. My work is about taking spiritual ideas, intuition, manifestation, quantum leaping, and grounding them in the real world. so that they can actually work. I did my time as a little hippy-dippy living in the jungle. Now we're here doing the real work. I recommend watching this video next, where I break down quantum leaping and why it's not what you might think it is. I'll see you there.